First and 10 from the 16. They drove all the way to the Minnesota 29, went for it on 4th and 1. Again, DeAndre Swift was stopped twice in the first half on 4th and short. So that drive ended after almost 7 minutes, exactly 7 minutes of possession. But the Vikings defense rising to the occasion as the Bears were getting closer and closer to the red zone. And you said it perfectly. This wasn't, I don't have faith in my defense. This was, I have tremendous faith in my defense. We're going for the kill shot here. And we'll probably get the kill shot anyway later if it doesn't work out. But let's just go ahead and do it here because the defense is kind of clicking. And, yeah, they gave up yards, but at the end of the day, they, at the right moment, made plays. And that's really one of the things you want to look for, too. Because, as you said, the talent is fairly compressed in the NFL, even though this year the bad teams declared themselves early and stayed bad. Game in and game out, it's not like it's 52-10 on a regular basis. You have games that are winnable by both teams regardless of what their record is. In division games, they're always winnable by the team that has the lesser record. But the Vikings have that understanding of the moment, especially on defense. They're not the 85 Bears, but they're a far cry from the 2022 Vikings, which couldn't stop a light breeze. So they step up on the key third downs. They step up when the defense or when the offense is getting closer and closer to being in position to score, and they throttled the Bears for most of the night. It really should have been 23-6, 27-6, 30-6. That last touchdown, the Bears scored. The only touchdown of the night was a gift after a blocked punt. So the Vikings defense really playing well. And let me mention that while I'm thinking of it, lest I forget. I wrote this last night during the game, and I was talking to some people over the weekend about this because I'm trying to put together a reliable list of coaching candidates for 2025. And the two no-brainers are Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel. After that, who the hell knows? Really. There are different guys that get different levels of publicity. And, Aaron Glenn's getting a lot of FaceTime when the Lions play, and it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling wave that takes a guy to a head coaching job. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about Brian Flores last night. There was a little bit, but there weren't a lot of shots, a lot of cutaways, the kind of stuff that position you to be one of the guys who make the short list. Why not Brian Flores? The biggest negative for him is something that shouldn't even be a negative. He's got an active piece of litigation / arbitration against the NFL, the Dolphins, the Giants, the Broncos, and the Texans. And it's almost 3 years old. It's barely gotten off square one. That's the only thing that an owner could look at and be tempted to say, I don't want to break ranks from club oligarch. I don't want 345 Park Avenue up 70, even though it's wrong. A lot of people think that if someone has sued you, you have every right to shun them and not do business with them. We don't slam the door. No, we're done with it. No, that's not the way it works. You can't retaliate against people who file their legal grievances against you. So my point is this, Devin. Flores has done tremendous work with that defense. He was, I think, moderately successful in a dysfunctional situation in Miami, and he got fired because Stephen Ross thought he was going to come out of it with Sean Payton and Tom Brady. I feel like there's got to be an owner out there who isn't dysfunctional and is brave enough and has a quarterback that doesn't need to be developed. That's the other key. You need a quarterback that is already fully formed, because I don't know that Brian Flores is going to develop a quarterback, but you line all those things up, and Flores should get a second shot next year.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the development of quarterback, even to that point, I think now he spent a year in Minnesota, 2 years in Minnesota, and he might start to see, okay, there's somebody else on this staff that he really likes, or through the relationship now that he has with Kevin O'Connell, he might meet some other offensive minds that he likes. And I know there's always the fear of once you get this really good offensive coordinator, they'll be gone soon too. But I also think of Brian Flores he has a unique thing about him as far as he started his career in scouting for the Patriots. Then he was the offensive assistant, a quality control guy on offense. Then he became the assistant special teams coach. Then he got moved to defense where he did safeties, then linebackers, then basically the defensive coordinator in 2018 for the Patriots. So he's seen everything that it goes into running an organization. So he has a lot of knowledge in that situation. So I think he gets his first crack at it. It doesn't work out the way that he kind of thought it might have. Even though they had back-to-back winning seasons, it didn't work out in Miami. But then he goes and he's under Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. And now, like I said, with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, he sees totally different organizations and how they're ran compared to New England and what he did in Miami. He gets to see the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we always talk about is the model of consistency. Only 3 head coaches in the entire, years and history of this franchise. Then he gets to see kind of the Sean McVay, Shanahan tree with Kevin O'Connell and who he is as a coach, which we see it all the time. It seems awesome how he inspires the team, what he says before, after game. So I think Brian Flores is in the right time to now take over an organization and a franchise because he's seen everything. He's experienced different things. To me, it would be an ideal hire for especially a team that wants a leader. You saw the way that those defensive players came to the press conference after Tua said the things he said about Flo. Those guys had his back. I remember talking to Harrison Phillips in the offseason, and he was like, I don't understand how he doesn't have interviews. He was so passionate. We're at the Super Bowl in Vegas in a store, and he's going on and on about how great Flores had been that past season, what he's looking forward to next season, happy they have him, but he should be a head coach. So maybe someone is sitting there like, hey, we're tired of running on this hamster wheel. We're tired of firing a coach every 2-3 years. Let's get a guy in here that we say, hey, he's going to be a leader of men, and we're not going to just do what everybody else is doing. We're going to try to get in front of this thing and start winning for a change, and I think Flo would be their guy.
The response from Flores to the criticism that Tua leveled against him, I thought was perfect. He acknowledged maybe he's done some things that he would do differently now. He's learning. He's growing. It was a weird time in Miami. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I mean, he might have been right about Tua. Like the Dolphins, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but think about what the Dolphins have done in the aftermath of Flores. They have bent over backwards for Tua. They've tiptoed around Tua. They picked up the fifth-year option at a time when I don't think they should have picked up the fifth-year option, but they were trying to rebuild. And maybe they would say we're trying to rebuild the confidence after the damage that Flores did. But it's fair to say that there's a ceiling on Tua that isn't getting weaker. He's not showing signs of curling up a fist and preparing to punch through it. The narratives are narratives for a reason. There's a limit to what he can do. There's a limit to what the Dolphins can do. Can that change next year? Sure. But at a certain point, Devin, you are who you are. And with Flores, he's not accepting that he is who he is. He's growing and changing and evolving every step of the way. And that's I think, what you're saying. He's seen so much. He's done so much. He's picking things up, which will make him better when he gets a second chance, if he gets a second chance.
Yeah, and not to just jump in on all of the Tua stuff, but Sim said it Sunday, during Football Night in America, and then I went on the Unbuttoned podcast with him of, hey, Tua's your highest paid guy. He's your guy. And it just feels like, not hating on Tua in any kind of way, but it seems like every time they go into a big game, a game where you're like, hey, this is a playoff, do or die, or hey, like they went into Houston last week, this is a game that they need to go get. It seems like the first question comes up to like, well, what kind of version of Tua are they going to get? How's Tua going to do on the road? And this wasn't a game in the cold or anything. This was a game in the perfect elements in a dome, and you walked away and it was just like, he played a really bad game. He didn't play well. And then you look, and again, since Flo was left, when they played teams above 500, I think it was like 1-17. So the question marks are still there, and I think maybe there is an owner that sits back and says, hey, tell us how you knew that he wasn't the guy. Because now that we look, we're trying to evaluate the next quarterback, or we're trying to figure out if the guy we have here should we pay him all this money? Like maybe there is a couple teams that bring him in for an interview to say, tell us what you thought about Tua. How come you knew that? How come you wanted Justin Herbert supposedly instead of Tua? I think those are the things that could come up. And you're right. He kind of knew about Tua before everybody else, at least in the Miami organization, knew what it was about him.
Of course, when he's in that interview, you better hope they don't ask, why did you want Deshaun Watson so badly, too? Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something else. But here's the best example of where things are with Tua and the Dolphins, and then we'll move on. Omar Kelly, who's been covering the Dolphins forever, he's been on the show a couple of times this season. The headline of his column in the aftermath of Miami's loss to Houston is this: Tua Tagovailoa delivers more proof he isn't him. So it's not just us. The locals are on board with this idea that there's only so far that Tua is going to take you, and Brian Flores knew that, and it's why he wanted to go after a Deshaun Watson and upgrade at the most important position on the field. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.